Hey, hello, I'm Kråkan, also known as Corvus Cornix, and welcome to Yacc, yet another Crowcast where I pick a game, I play it for a week, and then I talk about it. This week's game is Burger Time for the NES, originally released in the arcades in 1982, and later to the NES in 1987. Developed by Data East and published by Data East. And also there will be spoilers, just so you know, but first a little backstory. Last week I was out on Twitch as usual, and I happened to come upon Jeremy P of the Retrovaniacs, one of the actual guys that more or less inspired me to do my reviewing format and later my podcast. And he gave me a shout out because I'm in his Discord, and he told me he actually liked my podcast, short and concise. And it's very surreal to get a shout out from someone who actually inspired you to do what you do, which is kind of awesome. So in honor of that, I played Burger Time this week because it's one of Jeremy P's favorite games, if not his favorite game. So yeah. So as you start up the game, you can select between 1 or 2 players. You start with 4 lives and you have 5 pepper shakers. And the pepper shakers are used to stun the enemies. You press either the A or B button to suspend the pepper. So the gameplay is simple. You are a chef called Peter Pepper, and you're supposed to stack 4 giant burgers on each stage. And you stack burgers by climbing up scaffolding and walking over the different ingredients, and they fall down the stack. And you try to avoid the condiments, the hot dog, the pickle, and the eggs. And as I said before, you can stun these enemies, or you can dispose of them by crushing them between the ingredients as they drop down. It's a little bit finicky how they drop down. You have to lure them over the ingredient or under it, and then you just walk over it and then it falls down. So Peter Pepper can't jump. He can just climb and avoid the enemies in this case. The mechanic of climbing the ladders is very finicky. You have to be very precise on where you position yourself against the ladder, because I've died so many times this week just trying to climb up the ladder, and you're panicking because you're out of salt shakers or pepper shakers, and you just try to climb that ladder and the enemy is right up your behind, and it's very frustrating because you have to be, as I said before, precise on the ladder just to be able to climb it up and down. And that's about it. You stack hamburgers and you try to get a high score as possible. And this game is really hard. There are only a couple of levels. I think there are 6 levels in total. So if you know what you're doing, you can beat this in one sitting, but it's super hard. And more or less everything comes down to the, getting used to the controls, knowing kind of the enemy pattern and try to avoid them, because I wouldn't call it AI, but the enemies are super aggressive and they can swarm you easily. And the pepper shakers kind of run out really fast if you're not paying attention. Oh, and once you beat the 6th level, the final level, the game loops. So I think you keep your score, but you just continue where you left off. So gameplay. Try to make a giant stack of burgers while avoiding the hot dogs, eggs, and pickles. And meanwhile, or doing so, getting a highest score as possible. Control. The D-pad moves the chef around, Peter Pepper. And the A and B button throws pepper on the condiments, the enemies, and start pauses the game. Graphics, black backgrounds, bun, lettuces, meat, you know what you're looking at. And that's the thing about NES games, they're very simple in their graphical nature, so very sparse on the details, but you know exactly what you're looking at. So the main character sprite and the enemy sprites aren't that detailed, but they get the point across. So another thing that Jeremy P and I talked over via private messages over Discord was the different versions of, or rather he wanted me to look at the different versions of Burger Time. So I actually preferred the NES port over the arcade version because it looks better. The arcade port from 82 kind of looks like an Atari game, a little bit more bland, but nothing wrong with that. But the port that I liked the most was the Game Boy port, because the graphics kind of look cuter and they are even more limited than the NES port. So for some reason the Game Boy port kind of stole the show for me, and I looked more into that than any of the other ports. Sound and music. Konori Kanyesu made the music for this game, and it's repetitive. It has one track, and there's a couple of small jingles for when you game over or progress to a stage. So I think in total there were 3 or 4 tracks. Nothing to write home about, but yeah, it doesn't have to be complicated music to be an enjoyable game. Easter eggs, secrets, and glitches. So while researching this game, I found some really weird, a really weird commercial for the Intellivision. So just watch it. It's on YouTube. Really weird. So in conclusion, I wrote, yes, try it. It's a fun little game to play in small bursts, but I actually ended up rage quitting this week because it got too hard and I went on a munchie. So this game made me hungry. There's something about the mechanics with the ladders that I don't like. When you're stressed out and you need to get away from the enemy and you're out of like peppers, and you need to climb down the ladder and you can't climb down the damn ladder because you have to be really precise on your positioning. That's one of the more frustrating parts with the game. And I think that's about it. I want to thank Jeremy P, the other Jeremy, and Billy Holiday on the Yacc Podcast because they inspired me to do my reviewing format of videos and also later inspired me to do this podcast in the first place. I wouldn't have played Burger Time if it wasn't for these guys, basically. So there you go. There you have it. So anyway, thanks for listening and or watching, and take care.